This is the Wisdom Table, and before us, the Wisdom Table is East Harlem Community Radio, also known as El Barrio Radio, based in the James Weldon Johnson houses in East Harlem, USA. And the Wisdom Table is dedicated to bringing information to the community, and we have, as part of the Wisdom Table, we have at least 5 seniors who are capable of handling this show on their own, and we're going to have somebody put up some money from outside the Wisdom Table as an inducement to them saying, I'm going to take it next week. So we have some kind of scholarship, for a day. And after the first one joins in, then the other's going to say, I can do that too. I've been doing it all my life. At any rate, I'm Brother Leroy, thankful to the Most High for blessing us with the opportunity to be with you and you to be with us. The program that you're about to hear, the Wisdom Table, does not reflect the views, attitudes, whims, deeds, or any other proclivities of the management of the community center, nor of the management of the development. However, the program does reflect the research done by the participants who are live in living color in studio, which we may very well have Lloyd Street on next week, or by phone interview, which is the case today. And we have a very, very favorite guest of ours, and Harlemites are familiar with the name, and that is Dr. Velva Boles of Louisiana by way of North Carolina. Dr. Velva Boles, thank you for joining us. I'm excellent, and we have full participation here at the table. One of our great psychologists, as you can hear, people who that's one of the afflictions in the black community. If we're not playing basketball, we're playing music.
Loud.
Wherever, and I'm glad to see us playing basketball, believe me. I am glad versus standing on the corner, and we all have to pitch in and help our future generation to survive the perils of what's happening now. Our subject today is the presence and the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. And just to start it off, there's an article that we found that says, Englishman catches super gonorrhea after a one-night stand with a woman in Southeast Asia, in world's first confirmed case, and it's resistant to 2 crucial antibiotics. Now, this guy visited Southeast Asia, and so we shouldn't be afraid of this particular kind of strain of gonorrhea being present in the U.S., right?
Right now, that is the first documented case, but keep in mind, he visited someone in Southeast Asia. All they're telling you is whoever he visited obviously had what he brought back to the UK. So there's a difference. If you think about it, too often we talk about discovery when in fact it means reported. Remember, Columbus discovered America, but we had people living here functioning, but it's when some group decided that it was worthy to acknowledge something someone else did. So I would caution everyone to say, if the fella came back from Southeast Asia with it, whoever he got it from has it too. So how can it be first reported case? You know, if you stop for a moment, it didn't just spring out of nowhere. He had a one-night stand with someone. Whoever he was with has it too. And if he visited this one person, how many others visited this one person?
So what is this super gonorrhea?
Okay, well, gonorrhea, as you know, is a Neisseria class, well, you may not know, it's a Neisseria class bacteria. That means gram-negative. Now, the reason I'm giving you this jargon is we have two types of bacteria, gram-positive and gram-negative. And the significance is the gram-negative are very adaptable. It has an outside mucus coating that can change its proteins readily. Now, the significance of that means how easy is it for it to become resistant to different antibiotics. So the more people that have this particular bacteria and get treated with an antibiotic, the more likely this antibiotic gets smart and changes out coding and therefore become resistant. And that's one of the reasons in CDC or health clinics, they say it is a reportable disease. And you would say, well, they are breaching privacy, telling people who you had sex with and where the bacteria came from. The reason they are tracking it is what I just told you. The more often someone contracts bacteria, takes an antibiotic to try and get rid of it, the smarter that bacteria becomes.
In that person.
Well, the person, yes, in that one person, but obviously their behavior means they share, and they don't keep it to themselves. So if that person is the term, I guess, for the politically correct term, promiscuous, or if they're in a business for income, then they will share. So let's just take an example. There's someone, I'm an escort, and I'm with, let's say, 4 to 5 people a night. And I discover I have gonorrhea, and I'm going to make myself clean and upstanding, and I go and I get treatment. Okay? They tell me abstain from any kind of sexual contact for 5 to 7 days. Here's your medicine. Well, I take the medicine for 3 days, and it seems to me I'm okay. I'm cleaned up. And I go right back to business. Well, guess what? The bacteria that has not all been killed is getting smarter because I took the medicine. And all the people I visit with during that time are getting the smarter bacteria. So when they discover they're infected and they go to the doctor and the doctor gives them the same medicine I took, guess what? It doesn't work. So you got it?
The essence is that bacteria is a living organism just like we as human beings, and if we're threatened with some kind of annihilation, our nature fights back to live. And so the bacteria fights back to live, and in our case, let's say human beings, we go and we learn some martial arts or self-defense or get us a gun to protect ourselves. So we're fighting to survive. That's my point. So it's just that basic in terms of the next time around where you try to rob that person, they got something for you.
Yes, absolutely. That's an excellent example. And the more often they get, the bacteria get exposure to medicine, the better it can arm itself against that medicine. So if you have a population where sex is their business, and we know there are populations where sex is their business, then that particular group, even if they're trying to be conscientious, and what I mean is they go to the health centers, they get checked, they take antibiotics, they are in fact the seed, if you like, for resistance. Because every time they get a new bacteria infection and start the medication, they're likely to have a more resistant strain than someone who has never been exposed to a sexually transmitted disease.
Okay, so we have children and grandparents in our families, and this is for the table and those who are seeing this over the internet. So what we're talking about is preventive information, because our grandchildren, our children in school, they probably won't come into contact with this kind of sexually transmitted disease for another 5, 7, 10 years.
Well, unfortunately, one of the hotbeds of increase for sexually transmitted diseases is middle school and high school. And I hope somebody's jaw drops. One of the reasons, unfortunately, indicated by CDC studies and other types of studies, healthcare studies, is that because pregnancy prevention now is understood. 30 years ago, that was a big trepidation. Girls were told you shouldn't get pregnant, your future's blocked. Boys were told to get her pregnant. So the concept of pregnancy is what is the sexual taboo. Well, now that most young women take contraceptives or have IUDs or have some form of pregnancy prevention, that taboo has been removed. And unfortunately, we are not pressing the idea that sex is dangerous. It's no longer the concept don't get pregnant. It's the concept don't look in your future. Don't get sterile. Don't get HIV. I've even had young people believe HIV is no threat anymore because you can take a pill, you can take medicine, you don't die. So unfortunately, families and parents is your responsibility. Teachers, I hope you take that responsibility, are not warning the young people of the risk of what they call recreational sex.
Okay, so
and you're familiar with recreational sex, right?
No, go ahead, flesh that one out.
Recreational sex, this was my eye-opener. I was working with 6th to 8th graders, and they wore these little yarn bracelets. This was true about 6 years ago. And different color, braided or single color, was indicating to their peers what type of recreational sex they indulged in. Some would do oral sex only. Some would do rectal sex only. And this was part of the jewelry. And they'd come out and they had a rainbow colored bracelet braided that meant I do it all. You had this or that. So in their thinking among their peers, you were having recreational sex. It had nothing to do with love, had nothing to do with boyfriend, girlfriend, or dating or marriage. It was like a sport, an activity. So yeah, the risk for that group is very high because pregnancy is no longer the biggest threat, but gonorrhea and syphilis and chlamydia and HIV are. But no one makes that into the horror story that they used to make getting pregnant.
Let's jump ahead. We're going to jump back. So what if a person has the various STDs and go down the list? I mean, it's just a rash. It's just a discharge. Ain't no big thing.
Oh, okay. What's it for? Well, gonorrhea for most men is a burning during urination. And the reason I say men are the ones who have more symptomology early. They'll have burning during urination. They'll have a yellow to off-white discharge, and that usually shows up as a staining in their underwear. And I pause because a lot of young people now go commando, so they don't wear underwear. I hope that didn't shock anybody, but that's the truth. So they may have staining in their clothes. But either way, a male will see it first, and he may urinate and then see a discharge like pus or whiteness. And that's how they usually come in. They're seeing something unusual, or they're seeing a stain, or they're having the burning. In a young woman, she may not have any noticeable symptoms. Let me repeat that. She may have no noticeable symptoms. And the problem here is...
Powering off. Powering on.
Which is a fallopian tube, and it can scar or injure the tube.
Sister
Yes?
Boles, I want you to go back. Go back. We had a momentary. No, not for my explanation. I'm not in one of those explanation go backs. I'm in. We were cut off for maybe 20 seconds. So I need you to go back to the fact that many of our young people are not wearing underwear and come forward.
Yes, they go commando. Yes.
They go commando.
Wait, hold on a second. The wisdom table is talking at the table, and Brother Leroy Kindergarten Leroy ain't here. What did y'all say?
She said commando.
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 What is that?
No panties.
No
Commando.
bandits.
Commando. She said what? The psychologist at the table said commando. You ever hear that?
Never.
You ever hear that, Dr. Boles?
What, commando?
Yes.
Oh, for sure. That's what they call it. They a commando. They don't wear underwear. The young ladies who are wearing the skin tight,
Yeah.
Oh.
the skin tight pants, the leggings, they don't want an underwear to show. They don't want that print. They don't want an appearance of underwear. So they either wear the thongs or they go without.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So come on. I'm in the process of graduating to first grade. First grade. Hey, listen, I had a pre-conversation with Sister Boles last night, and I looked where's I might look. I ain't looking no more. I have to call the fire department. I ain't looking no more. You don't know what's going on out here. But go ahead. That's a pause
Okay.
for. Go ahead.
The comment I was making, young men for gonorrhea are usually the first to report, or because their symptoms are immediate. They get a burning sensation when urinating, and once they complete a stream, they see a discharge, a flat-fish discharge. And a number of young people come to health centers or private physicians come in with a complaint of a drip. And now many of you may have heard that term, that he has the drip or a drip. That was a very popular way of saying it. And during my early days in medical school, I didn't understand it, and I was working at a clinic, and that's what the guy kept repeating, I got the drip. I got the drip. And I had no clue what he was talking about. But at any rate, the men may, within the first 2 to 3 days after exposure, go and find out what's going on because of his discomfort. And a uncircumcised man will have higher chance of concentrating the bacteria because foreskin can be an area of occlusion or of capture. Hygiene is very important. Generally, in a female, if she does not have any symptoms for 7 to 10 days, if bacteria is in high enough concentration, it will migrate from the cervix up into the fallopian tube. And the tube, that's where the egg looks when it gets fertilized. And this puts woman at risk for in vitro, for a tubal pregnancy, which can be life-threatening. It puts at risk of something we call a pelvic infectious disease, PID, and this is tremendously painful. And it can result in sterilization as well. So women are at risk of rendering themselves sterile. And if that's not how the bacteria migrates, it can migrate into the blood system and can affect. You can have a swollen wrist or swollen ankle. And in young people, when they have a mysterious joint that swells up and hurts, they didn't injure it, they didn't hit it. We usually tap to see what the fluid is. It can be a gonorrhea arthritis. And if that's not bad enough, it can go to the heart and brain. There is a form of dementia that results from the gonorrhea entering the brain.
How young has it been reported dementia coming from gonorrhea among people?
Well, it has to do with the immune system. It's one of us, depending on whether you were breastfed, and this is always a big topic. Mother that breastfeeds in the first 3 days after birth gives her child a lifelong type of immunity. If mothers who modern day mothers now don't want to breast pump, they don't want to breastfeed, children do not get that initial colostrum, and they have a struggle with their immune system. So depending on how reinforced your immune system is, determines the likelihood of you getting what we call a secondary complication. If you have any kind of immune problem, let's say you have Crohn's or lupus or MS or irritable bowel syndrome or any of these autoimmune situations, you may be at a very high risk of this bacteria making it to the brain or the heart.
Okay, all right. So syphilis, chlamydia, herpes, no big thing.
Well, herpes, unfortunately, used to be like this horror story. Now, for reasons you see on TV, when they tell you to go out and get this medicine and the fever blisters away and blah, blah, blah. Because of TV and marketing, we've made what is horrible and ugly into a facade. So too many people think that herpes is no big deal. But herpes is absolutely a big deal. It used to be two kinds, herpes simplex and herpes gestalia. Guess what, Brother Leroy? Now it's indistinguishable. What does that mean? Oral sex is a big deal now. That what used to just on the lip, on the face, has been taken downstairs, and what used to be downstairs is now upstairs. So these two species of herpes are totally indistinguishable. I don't even know if they do a test to try to distinguish them. So these commercials showing you can take some kind of medication and the herpes is not a big deal. If you are childbearing age and you get pregnant, pregnancy is really serious. A baby that passes through the birth canal on a woman who has herpes is at risk of being blind. They're at risk to have infections that go to the brain. So if we know that someone has herpes, whether they call it active outbreak or not, we recommend an cesarean section to prevent the exposure coming from the birth canal.
So just to hit that one again, the
herpes in a pregnant woman, whether she has an active outbreak. An active outbreak, by the way, means blistering, it has ulcers, it's painful, it's usually red, it oozes. So everything about herpes, in my opinion, is just awful. You know, the fever blister, ugly can be on the upper lip. Now imagine it on the lips of the woman. And it looks and feels and is just horrible. Then there's multiple blistering, multiple ulcers, there's oozing, and it can be inside the vagina. It's not just internal. It can be an internal as well. And if a pregnant woman knows she has herpes, most gynecologists or obstetricians will recommend a cesarean section to the baby born rather than have the baby pass through the birth canal.
okay, questions at the table.
Is there a way that they could have given the baby a treatment before it born?
Not for herpes. Herpes actually, that's what I mean, nobody talks about it. HIV got a lot of press because people die, it kills off T cells. Herpes has been around for centuries. There is no known cure. I repeat, no known cure for herpes. It's a virus that can hide. Anyone who ever has fever blisters, whether if they get the flu, some women, if they're their cycle, all of a sudden they have that blister or the tingling come up on the hip, and then it goes away. And they may not have a lesion 8-10 years, and they have a stressful situation, and there it is again. So the herpes virus is one of the most aggressive nerve-injuring viruses known.
Can you hear us?
What's that?
You just went out for a second where you were saying.
I said herpes is one of the main nerve-attacking viruses known to man. Reason I qualified saying Western medicine, traditional medicines, some Chinese medicine, some Native American medicine, they're a group of native people who have never been exposed to the virus, and we know that because they don't have antibodies. The question is there something in native medicine, alternative medicine, that prevents herpes from forming? And the answer is probably yes. Western medicine is very arrogant. We don't look at native and traditional ways. We only get, discovered or it's reported if Western historians reported. But right now, by Western medicine standards, there's no known cure for herpes simplex or herpes genital. It can go away, meaning it hides, but it is still in the body. See, a lot of people don't know chickenpox is a herpes class disease. When you have chickenpox, that's caused by a herpes virus. And all of us know about shingles. You can get over chickenpox, and 50 years later, develop shingles. That's still the herpes virus living in your body due to chickenpox.
All right, hit that again because
please.
the table just reacted to that connection.
I heard that before.
Yeah,
Okay,
chickenpox.
chickenpox, as we call it, the common name chickenpox, is a herpes. It's in the herpes family. It is a herpes virus. If you think about chickenpox, it's a pustulate and it itches or it hurts, and we called it childhood diseases. Well, if you've had chickenpox, 50 years later, you can develop shingles. And it's the same virus. All it means is that virus went dormant. It was living somewhere in your body, and it was there for those 50 years. And let's say you got diabetes, or maybe you developed COPD or some kind of immune weakening condition, and boom, you got shingles.
Okay. Chlamydia. There's no big thing on chlamydia.
Wow. Chlamydia is one of the least discussed, and for women, one of the most aggressive. Chlamydia for men can cause epididymitis. And what is that? It means that, I'll just take it to the street, the scrotum, the nuts, the balls, whatever you call it, has a very fine group of tubules, and that's how sperm is discharged. It comes out through that network. And chlamydia will find those small tubules and infect it. And you can have orchitis, which is your testes will swell and be painful. Sex will be excruciating. Ejaculation will be like torture. And if not treated, you can become sterile. You'll never father a child. For a woman, the same is equivalent, but in her anatomy, it goes to the fallopian tube, and it's known mostly to scar it. It'll create a cobblestone or rough surface within the fallopian tube. The significance of that is when she ovulates, the egg can't make it all the way down to the uterus. And it can either totally block it, that means she's sterile, or if sperm makes its way to the egg that's stuck in the tube, she will have a tubal pregnancy if that ruptures is fatal to the mother. So it's bad news too.
Yes.
So going back in time, there was such a thing as claps and blue balls. Which one is which?
Well, that's most likely chlamydia.
What's
when
claps?
You say clap was gonorrhea. They had terms like clap, drip. They had the street terms. They were more or less talking about gonorrhea. If the man said he had clap, he's talking about a discharge or a dirty underwear indication. So that.
Powering off. Powering on.
Doc?
Yeah. Did someone say something? I was listening. I thought someone commented.
We had the Bluetooth went down for a couple of seconds.
Oh, okay.
Do we have any questions?
I said.
I'm sorry, you were making a point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said clap is most likely gonorrhea, and that would be because it's kind of a nasty thing. The drip would cause underwear to stick to itself, so it has a stickiness. If it had blue balls, that's probably chlamydia caused, because if he has any kind of infection in those very fine network of tubules, it is bad news for him. They say it's like a toothache in your jewels.
Okay. So once again, the dangers to young people, our children are being taught by way of the internet pornography. They're being taught sex in school by strange people who have agendas that is not that of traditional sex, and videos, etc. So your clinical experience in some of the cases where you've seen youngsters infected with any of those diseases. Can you share experience,
Sure.
either of yourself or others, or what's been in?
Well, I can tell the ones that kind of shocked me, and I had one situation where a mother came and she was rather indignant, and she was bringing a very attractive, this was not African American, Black American family, it was actually a white family, and she was a woman of substance, and this daughter was a very attractive young lady, little cheerleader. She was 12 years old, and kind of fluffy, rounded. She was a skinny little kid, but she certainly wasn't a formal woman in her appearance. And the mother was indignant because she was saying her daughter's been missing school and didn't have the energy or stamina she had. And she'd been to 3 other doctors, and they were all giving her this antibiotic, that antibiotic, and the child still had a terrible sore throat, runs a fever at night, blah, blah, blah. So I examined the young lady, and my first observation when I went in to see her, and I was looking at her as pediatrics when she was 12. But when she was getting undressed to put on the dressing gown, I noticed her underwear. And this young lady had on some very expensive Victoria's Secret kind of underwear. And my training and instincts are, only reason a woman will wear pretty underwear is she's going to have somebody else see it. Think about it. What does a kid want to have on this very nice matching lace, blah, blah, blah. So I noted it, didn't say anything. I said, well, maybe mother is, living through daughter and buying her this stuff. So when I examined the young lady and was talking about her, she was not overly developed. She was maybe a 10-1, which means her breast was there, but nothing voluptuous. And there was not a lot of body hair. She didn't look like she was precocious or anything. And I noticed when I looked at her throat, she didn't have any of the hallmark signs of strep throat. And that's what you look for, the red, the streak. So I went on and swabbed her throat, and I cultured it for gonorrhea, something we didn't have. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, I think it's 8 to 10 days later, I get a call from the lab, and it's positive. So I call mom back in. People have been giving her steroids and penicillin and different kinds of things because of this chronic sore throat. And I was having to tell this mother, her 12-year-old daughter, this pristine family, daughter positive with gonorrhea in her throat. And there's only one way I know you get gonorrhea in the throat. So when I told the mother, she was just indignant. I showed her the data. She wanted me to repeat it. I told her, well, we can repeat it, but you're doing your daughter's treatment and so forth. So in doing the culture, they tell you what the gonorrhea was sensitive to. And in this case, the young lady's gonorrhea was responsive to the 2. And keep in mind, we currently must use 2 types of medicine at the same time. We give Rocephin or cephalotrexone to the penicillin family. We do that by injection. And then we give you 1 gram of azithromycin, which is an erythromycin. And a gram is a huge dose of medication. So this mother was undone and just horrified. And the young lady, she said, oh, all of the cheerleader girls will give the boy's head on the football team. That's part of what the cheerleader girls do.
Wow.
So that's how casual. That's what I mean by recreational. She wasn't saying this anything. She didn't have a boyfriend. She didn't do dating. But she's so proud to be of that age in the chirping squad. And she went along with whatever she did. I don't know the age range of the squad, but she was 12.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by the casualness. The idea that I didn't have sex. It's like Clinton. He didn't have sex with that woman.
He had no sex. She had sex with him.
So oral stimulation not considered, unfortunately, by the young students to be anything, and that's the responsibility of parents and grandparents to make sure they understand the risk. And no, it's not okay. I mean, personally, if you don't have a value, why and where did it come to be that placing a person's genital in your mouth was casual and okay? And I counsel when she was saying, oh, all the cheerleaders do it for the people.
So,
That's what the girls did.
questions at the table.
So that means you need to sit down with your children and have a community talk with them, so they know
But
what.
you think that mothers or women or even you at the table, how comfortable would you be explaining to 10 to 14-year-old girls about oral sex?
Not
Well-
real comfortable.
These days, as a mother, you just have to put that on the side to keep from running to a doctor with your child. Sit down and have a conversation with them. Right now, these days, well, not these days, because back then they had children when they were young. You just have to sit down and explain things to your children. Talk with them.
You see,
Because age is not no number no more. Sex is there.
and when I was a young girl, my mother didn't tell me anything. I found out stuff through my friends, through that person and that person and that person. And I still boo-boo, but I know better now. Should tell your kids when they're young. Don't wait till they make all types of mistakes to try to tell them how to do certain things so they won't be in certain predicaments. You have to sit down and talk to them. Because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And it might be the wrong information. And then you got all types of things that keep you from having kids. Back then, they didn't. Now, they got everything. So just tell them. Just sit them down and tell them. You got to put your pride to the side and just tell them. That's all. That's what I would do.
No, back then my aunt told me, Vaseline, walk with the Vaseline, because I don't know what you doing.
But what the Vaseline gonna do?
The Vaseline is supposed to help the sperm from going up.
Huh?
Right.
Vaseline helps stop the sperm from going where it's gonna go to.
Huh?
Huh?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Take it in the
Take
corner.
you in the room, baby.
Take it in the corner.
Dr. Boles.
You know
I'm
what I
Doctor, I don't know whether
I have.
Dr. Eva, Dr. Jenkins, Dr. Shirley.
When I was a kid.
I'm listening to the conversation and it's so very interesting.
Yeah, what's
Number
it?
one cause for condom failure is Vaseline.
Wait a minute, you gotta
Yeah.
talk. Wait, you gotta talk louder, sis.
I said the number one cause for condom failure is Vaseline.
All right.
All right.
Vaseline is a petroleum jelly, and it will
Yes.
dissolve a condom. Now, I do understand what's being said. She said the idea of Vaseline will block sperm from traveling into the vagina,
Yes.
and I know that was widely believed, but there's no proof. There is proof, however, that if a young man is using a condom and the young lady is not moist or is uncomfortable and they put Vaseline dissolves the material that condoms are made of. The latex material will dissolve, and it is the number one reason for condom failure in young couples who are unfamiliar with KY jelly. They brought out KY jelly, which is glycerin, and that's a water-based lubricant, and it will not dissolve the condom. But Vaseline, please don't tell anyone to use Vaseline, even if they're using a condom, because you're setting them up for failure. I mean, I've done all kinds of stuff. thick saps had been used. I can't imagine anyone putting thick sap into vagina. But I've had them talk about thick sap. I've heard them talk about Vaseline. Now, there are some techniques that women of the night, in talking to madams, I'll put it that way, what was used and has some questionable anti-fertilization is lemon. I don't know if women ever heard of lemon. They used to take a lemon and cut it a certain way.
No, what did
and
you
place
spell
it
that?
in the vagina.
Spell that, Doc.
Lemon, like lemonade. A lemon. Lemon. Lemon because it is an acid. Lemon not makes you nice and fresh. Come on, don't knock it. Let me tell you what I was told by a madam. You cut a lemon in such a way that you put it into the vagina and it acts just like a diaphragm. Think about it. Well, you may not know it. How many of you there know about diaphragm?
I know about
Yes.
Diaphragm.
Yeah.
Do you know about diaphragm?
Yes.
Brother Leroy?
Everybody but Leroy and listen, this is true East Harlem Community Radio. This is absolutely the truth. You're not gonna hear it, and it's a clean conversation. You're not gonna look. I admit, I heard the term, but I don't know. But the lemon, the lemon.
Okay, wait. Before we move to lemon, I'm gonna ask my ladies a question. How many ladies there could explain diaphragm to someone?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm number one. Is made like a circle with a rubber on it. Squeeze it and put it up your uterus. That's
Well,
one.
explained it. Okay, now this is for Brother Leroy. You heard what she said. It's shaped like a circle. It's usually silicone or a lightweight plastic, and it's the size of maybe a very small disc. That's about an inch and a half in diameter. It's a circle. You bend it in half, you insert it in the vagina, and when you release it, it opens back up and it covers the cervix, which means it's like a cap. It literally closes the mouth of the uterus. So if you have intercourse with a diaphragm in place, the sperm theoretically cannot get to the uterus because you blocked it. Okay, now let me take you back to my madam. Madam may not have the money to go and get fitted because you have to have different sizes of diaphragm. She would take a lemon, the fruit, the lemonade fruit, cut it in such a way that she creates like a circle. You cut it in half or cut it 1/3 of the way. Squeeze the juice out and use the rind part of the lemon just like a diaphragm.
Powering off.
Always when it's something.
The good part, right?
The same way that a diaphragm does.
Well, Dr. Boles, what about the IUD?
Oh, IUDs are still very popular. There's a number of young women who are still getting IUDs inserted. There were the most popular in the 70s and 80s had a copper T-shape. They now make them without copper because of MRIs and everything else. They have IUDs that have hormones, so it slowly releases hormones when they implant it. But yeah, IUDs are still very popular.
Well, they're popular without the consumer knowing some of the dangers of IUDs.
Now, the biggest danger at one time was that they had the copper. That's why I mentioned copper. So if you put the copper in, women were just saying, I have IUD. And if she were, let's say, in a car accident, and we thought when she got to the ER she had internal bleeding, if we sent her to an MRI, we could kill her. Because an MRI is a giant magnet, and any metal will be drawn. So if she had a metal IUD, like copper IUD, it could cause that metal to penetrate the uterus, her bowel, and literally come through her skin.
Now listen. In light of that, well, Sister Eva had a remark. I know what my question is.
I was just gonna say that I had an IUD right for about 6 months. I ended up in the hospital.
Yeah, IUDs can actually embed into your uterus.
Mhm.
And if it embeds in the uterus, it's just like having cancer or growth. It's
Yeah.
painful, it's crampy, it could cause bleeding when you weren't on your period. Oh yeah, it can embed in the uterus.
They had to do an MRI to find out where it was located.
Is it mode?
That's right, that's right.
Well,
It
that's
can
a low.
migrate.
That's a low grade MRI.
Well, she didn't have the copper. She obviously had an IUD that was not metallic. See, we
No,
used to
it
put
wasn't.
metallic
It was
in there
plastic.
because
Yeah,
copper prevents pregnancy because of its magnetic and other properties. So that was usually a very expensive IUD, and it's usually a woman who wanted to have children that she faces her children. That used to be a big deal in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
You wanted them 3 years
Exactly.
apart.
Mhm.
Then you would put an IUD in, and then when you're ready to have another baby, you just have the IUD
Take
removed.
it out, right?
You know all about this, right, Brother Leroy?
He learning. He learning.
The
It's a lesson.
IUDs. The IUDs. That's one of the first articles that I did for Muhammad Speaks newspaper.
Okay.
So I
okay.
researched
Well,
that.
you know that they have been demonized now because of how they've been abused. The wisdom table guest that just said she had to go into the hospital, there was an intentional implantation of IUDs in African women that they knew would cause sterility. See, the uterus, what they're doing is putting a foreign body. This is what the whole theory of IUD is. They're putting a foreign body in the uterus. And it's shaped, if you say, what is an IUD? Imagine a T, a capital T.
Right.
And they literally put it into the uterus such that the top of the T is pressing against the wall of the uterus. And that's an irritant. It's intentionally irritant. And therefore, if the woman ovulates, the egg will not implant. So she can't get pregnant because this foreign body has sensitized the uterus so that it doesn't accept the egg. Well, anything that's irritating long enough can create a problem.
Yeah.
That's why they actually tell you IUDs you shouldn't wear more than 2 years. Sometimes they max it out at 5.
Exactly.
But this constant irritation, the uterus might take its own action. It may scar, it can scar it in place. It may try to slough it, so it may form a fibroid or a type of tumor. It might be chronic injury where it develops an abscess. So what is an IUD is intentionally creating an irritation in the uterus. And the newer ones, instead of trying to create the irritation, they introduce something that's giving off a low-grade hormone. Either way, you're interfering with the body's natural function.
That's right.
Questions? Did we miss anything that? Let me see. A baby's. Let me see. The other document that we have is babies being born
With syphilis, right?
with syphilis.
We did that.
Well, I hope we never forget. I mean, I think that the American Holocaust for Black Americans is the Tuskegee experiment, as they call it. The syphilis experiment, I hope all we know, went on for 40 years. And despite their knowing very well how to treat syphilis with penicillin, which was available, penicillin been available since 1941, this experiment, if you like, didn't get stopped in 1974. So during this time, what was documented when they watched these Black people go through these many stages of syphilis infection, the original infection, as many of them would know, is there's an ulcer. It's non-painful where herpes hurts. The syphilis ulcer will open and it'll fall, will close, and it can form anywhere along the shaft of the penis and the tip. on a woman. It could be on any of the external genitalia as well as internal. And some women don't know they have syphilis until after intercourse they bleed. And that's because the tissue inside the vagina was already, as we call, fragile or friable, and the active intercourse caused bleeding or spotting. And when they get diagnosed with syphilis, again, syphilis used to be a relatively easy for modern America. Did you know they used to treat syphilis with mercury? And mercury, as we now know, is a poison, and it would cause people to go insane. But that used to be the treatment of syphilis. Anyway, getting back on point, modern day treatment was penicillin, and it was very effective, and it was reserved, unfortunately, for white Americans. And the black eye to the U.S. government, and yes, CDC was involved, and Public Health Service, all of the agents we still have. PHS is the Public Health Services, CDC, as you know, Atlanta is a big guru on disease. They were the ones running this. So they were sanctioning the guinea pigging, if you like, of black humans. I mean, this was watching what the disease will do. And they would pay local doctors not to treat the black people. The first stage I mentioned is just the ulceration and possible discomfort during sex. The second stage means you think you cured yourself. It'll just, the lesion goes away. Unfortunately, what it means is it goes deep. And this is when it moves to your internal organs. It is a type of bacteria called spirochetes, and it can travel to the largest artery in your body, your aorta, and it literally will penetrate the layers of that vessel and create weak spots. So you can have aneurysm, essentially, that can cause rupture and death. Your third stage, it can cause open sores on the skin. They even have a term for it. It's called yama. And it's like cancer. It doesn't react to any kind of antibiotic, and it's really nasty. The fourth stage is it goes to the brain, and you can literally have a syphilis dementia. Now, how fast these stages move can vary. And some people, it may be 3 years, and they're already demented. Some people, 15 years. So again, it has to do with how strong your body is in fighting or your immune system in trying to control this. Now, to answer your question about childbirth, the unfortunate thing, if a woman has syphilis and it's on to stage 2 and she thinks she's cleared and she gives birth, a child can be affected by syphilis. The child can be born without the development of dental ridges, which means they'll never have teeth. So the bacteria that can affect a growing baby in utero can affect all kinds of things. And the most notable was the dental ridge. There's some discussion of some brain altercation. But either way, a child born to an infected mother is at very high risk of deformity or stillbirth.
That's not one of the. Does that call for a C-section or?
Well, if the woman is a full-blown infected, C-section won't help because the child, while it's growing in the uterus, is infected. It has the ability to affect the child in utero. When we talked about C-section, it means like a herpes virus is on the inside. It's just the child passing through the birth canal, infected, passing down and through. But in the case of syphilis, it actually affects the growing child.
So listen, that experiment at Tuskegee, and going back to what you said about super gonorrhea and the body growing resistant to antibiotics. Well, where I was going, but they weren't given antibiotics. Did that experiment allow for that singular form, my words, that singular form of syphilis to be passed on to others, or in that process of that experiment at Tuskegee, did it give rise to a stronger syphilis?
Okay, it's a very interesting question. Two-part answer. The level of infectivity is stage 1 and stage 2. That means that the live bacteria is secreted in the juices of the female and the juices of the male. When it gets to stage 3, it is now the body reacting to this long exposure of bacteria that's given the sores and other things. So by stage 3, the bacteria in that person's body may now not be present, but the body has, as you were saying, prepared itself to fight, and it's been fighting so hard, it starts destroying your own tissue. So stage 3 and 4 is really a more autoimmune response. It's your body trying so hard to get rid of every remnant of that bacteria that it's now attacking cells. And it attacks brain cells, it attacks the skin cells, and it attacks the cells in the aorta. So the late stages of syphilis is really the body's over reaction to what it has suffered for so long. But the first 2 stages, yes, the possibility of transmitting a very virulent, that's the term, virulent, bacteria is very high. Virulent means it is aggressive and almost unstoppable.
Virulent, explain, does that, virulent,
Virulence is a good example is HIV. Let's go to one that's more modern. In HIV, you would hear people die. You were saying they had a death toll. 200 people died, 400 people died. But most of these were white homosexual males who contracted and brought it back to the U.S. And it wasn't in the general population. But if you remember, they made a quilt. Remember, they had all these vigils, and you had these celebrities doing all these campaigns because the virus, and that's what HIV is, very virulent. If you contracted it, you're dead in 6 months. You're dead in 8 months. So when they started doing research, the first medication, all they were able to do was knock down the virulence, which means you can live with the virus. You don't die because you have the virus.
okay.
And right now, that's where research is. They have knocked the virulence down. You can still catch AIDS, it's still transmitted, but the virulence is lower. You don't have to die immediately with the virus. So we've not cured it. We've not found how to kill it off, because it too can modify itself, but we've learned how to knock down the virulence.
Okay.
Powering off.
Questions? Doc?
He said off.
It's off.
Powering on.
Doc?
Yes?
The last thing, just of 2 or 3 minutes. The HPV vaccine.
Wow, that's a big one. That is the human papillomavirus, and that creates genital warts, and it is the one virus we know that causes cervical cancer. HPV immunization, or Gardia, I think it is, Gardia is the name of the medication, was designed for homosexual males. That reason we were talking about HIV, during the time of HIV, other sexually transmitted viruses go crazy. Herpes can just make, I remember a patient looked like he had sat down in scalding water. His entire buttock was just totally raw because of herpes virus. Another patient who was HIV, he looked like he was covered in tree bark. And HPV, which is the one you just asked me about, it is a wart-growing virus. And if you have no immune system or poor immune system, it can just cover you. He looks like his whole genitalia was covered in tree bark. So HPV was developed to prevent that horror story among immune-compromised young men, most were HIV positive. Well, as we've made progress and HIV now is not as virulent, here was a pharmaceutical company that had this vaccine and had no population. The population they developed it for no longer needs it. So they started to market it, saying, give children protection against HPV. And they were trying to make it in the United States mandatory for school-age kids from 10 to 14 to get this shot. Well, the first question is, only reason you get HPV is you're sexually active. You do not get herpes, human papillomavirus any other way. It is skin-to-skin contact. So why would I want to give my 12 to 14-year-old a antiviral if they're not exposed? So that's the big controversy, and the reason you hear people saying it, but they don't go on big billboards and get your children immunized. Canada has banned it. Parts of Europe says absolutely not. It is really a marketing thing for a pharmaceutical company that have developed a drug that no longer is in use. They're trying to develop a new market. HPV is only transmitted sexually.
And their marketing campaign has now included young boys.
Yes, well, what they want to do is say, well, I told you how it looks. A wart is horrible. It looks like the bark of a tree. If you ever seen a wart, it's not beautiful. If you think about a wart on your private parts, it's even less beautiful. We used to refer to it as verrucous. It's another term. The idea of cervical cancer, here's where the joke of it is, Brother Leroy. There are 8 different strains of HPV. Now, strain just means what is the characteristic? Like a parent can have 8 children. Each child is still their child, but they have different personalities. Well, HPV has 8 different personalities, if you want to use that analogy. Only 2 of those strains cause cervical cancer. The other 6 do not. They may cause, like I said, different kind of growths and so forth. So if you're giving a child immunization, guess what? The 2 strains that cause cervical cancer is not covered by this immunization. And if you give the child at age 12, if the young lady or young boy is not sexually active until they're 21, the vaccine doesn't cover them anyway. The life coverage is about 6 years. So why would I want to introduce a foreign vaccine? In my adolescence, I already got too many hormones, and it doesn't prevent the disease they claim that they created it for. It wasn't created for women, cervical cancer. It's created for homosexual men with HIV that had overgrowth of genital warts.
There needs to be a campaign to inform.
Educate people because they don't know.
Yeah. There needs to be a campaign by whomever, us, to ward against this, because every other day it's advertised on the TV.
Yeah, sure is.
And it's a nice advertisement when they're looking at the camera saying, did you know, Mommy?
Yeah.
Did you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's
And
why
then-
they're careful to let the young person do all the talking, so you can't sue them if they make allegations that are false. But they simply imply.
Wait, go back over that, Doc. Go back over
The
that
reason
technique.
they are using, the reason they're using that marketing technique is they are not themselves saying anything. They're using strictly emotion. If they were to claim that their injections prevent cancer, you could sue them because that's false. But by having a child talk about, I have cervical cancer and there's a vaccine that could have helped me, did you know it? There's no ground to sue them. That's a purely emotional campaign. They're not alleging anything.
That's insanity.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's.
This is the wisdom table.
That's it.
And what is happening, wisdom table, is that yes, you're in training to handle your own talk show, but because y'all go to beauty parlors and community centers and got families the size of a tribe of Israel and whatnot, the knowledge y'all pick up here, y'all gonna be on the phone. You better listen to this. Any questions, any statements?
Well,
I got a
one
youth
of my
room.
questions, a friend of mine was suffering with diabetes, and his daughter took him to the doctor in DC, and the doctor put him on for 2 weeks. He could not have any animal products and dairy, and but he could have salads, certain kind of salads. What happened was his numbers came down as far as being diabetic. So when I spoke to him, he says he doesn't really have the diabetes anymore. And you can't even get an appointment with that doctor because everybody is going to this doctor, and their numbers are going down as far as diabetes. I know.
Well, if it's type 2 diabetes, you can certainly reverse it. So, how many of you know about Dr. Seeley?
Sabi, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Well, Dr. Seeley was a pioneer in talking about how to cure. He used the word cure diabetes, and he's talking about type 2. Anyone with type 1 diabetes, this does not work. Type 1 means you do not make insulin in your body, and that has to be supplemented. But if it's type 2, your diet modification and behavioral modification can, in the words of Dr. Seeley, be cured.
That's right. So type 1, I know.
Type 1 you cannot cure. Type 1 means your pancreas, something happened. One of your organs in your body is no longer functioning correctly. That's type 1. Type 2, there's a whole bunch of theories, but according to Dr. Seeley, as far back as 45 years ago, says the reason you have type 2 is you are poisoning your body with certain compounds, and that's why the insulin's not working right. And when you take the poisons out, then your body takes over and corrects the insulin problem.
What's this doctor's name?
Sabi.
How you spell it?
S-E-B-I. S-E-B-I. Go research him. His daughters are still practicing in, I think, Dominican Republic, because they're in New York. Your home state was just aggressive against Dr. Seeley because of his revolutionary method. S-E-B-I.
Okay.
Y'all remember the sister we had on the first season, Sister Annette? You remember that? Sister Annette. Well, that was one of his.
His daughter.
No, not his daughter. One of his wives. But listen, Doc.
Of his wife.
Say who? Now listen.
His wife.
Sabi explained in another situation that there's a valve leading from the pancreas to the digestive area. What's that? The upper and lower stomach?
Well, yeah, but whenever you are absorbing food, that would be in the upper bowel, the duodenal jejunum section of the bowel.
Okay, so there's a valve leading from the pancreas into that area, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and
It's called the pancreatic duct.
okay. What he said is that the pancreatic duct can be clogged with hardened mucus, the same thing that appears in the arteries, etc. So what he said, he said his compounds are geared to dissolving that wherever it is in the body, dissolving that.
Yes.
And he said that he tells the patients to be very careful to follow his procedure, because when that valve is unclogged, the insulin shoots into the system and they can feel sick or become sick.
It will be an overwhelming sense of weakness. Yes.
Okay, so he said the cleansing compounds are important in water. I believe that's what he told me, you know, that they have to drink so much water so that when this thing happens, the level of insulin is neutralized. But now, he said the other part of the healing, he said that duct has been damaged by the insulin not getting out.
Yeah.
Or the pancreas, is whichever way it is. So he gave them a compound to heal the pancreas.
Isn't that what killed Aretha Franklin?
Could have.
Yeah,
You-
pancreatic
you're back?
cancer. That was good.
She didn't-
Wait a minute.
Is that your phone?
Maybe it's my phone. It's the phone.
What was supposed to have killed her?
Huh?
What was supposed to have killed her? The doctor? What did she have?
She had cancer of the
Pancreas. Pancreas
I'm not sure if it's directly.
is on the same line.
Yeah.
I lost you there.
That's the phone went down.
Okay.
The FBI had to change it over to CIA.
But no, in the comment of you're talking about Dr. Sadie's method, I've read him and I have nothing but positive. He is of the old traditional philosophy that the things that affect the body, one of them is called phlegm, Phlemen. And Dr. Sadie had a lot of traditional methods to relieve the body of phlegm. Now modern medicine here in the western U.S. are starting to say diabetes is something that has a buildup of sensitivity, and I'm laughing. I'm thinking they're trying to avoid to use the language of phlegm, but they're describing the same thing.
And he called it mucus.
Yes, mucus. If you go all the way back to the Greek Roman days and you go all the way to traditional medicine of Native American,
Powering off.
All right.
That's the FBI.
Powering on.
method.
You said if it cut off for a second, you said if you go back to the Roman days.
Yeah, Roman days, they had methods of purging or what they call fasting and cleansing. And believe it or not, that's when enemas were introduced. The idea of cleaning every orifice to clean out the body.
Which
So the concept of thinning the phlegm or thinning the mucus has always been practiced with traditional medicine. It's only in modern day that we don't.
So the cleansing of mucus, he called it intracellular cleansing.
Yes.
Intra.
And remember when I taught you about when we grew up, my mother would give us castor oil twice a year?
That's it.
See, in the tradition at that time is children need to get cleaned out. That would be her expression. It's time to clean the children out. So the whole concept of body cleansing has gone back for centuries. It's just in modern day we don't practice it. If you look at the rich and famous now, they're talking about probiotic, cleansing drinks. That's not new. They're just making it sound new and exotic.
Now that doctor down in D.C. told
Mr. Brown.
finish.
Yeah, the doctor told him when he felt a little hungry, get this stuff called cold press. It's organic juice, and it has in it kale, cucumber, green apple, spinach, mint, celery, lime, and parsley. And he was able to guys, he say, make it on this green drink. And what else did he say? You know, and he didn't feel those hunger pangs as he would, you know, eating meat and so forth. So I looked at, this is the gentleman who does, by the way, a 7-Eleven, if there's a 7-Eleven in your area, makes this drink.
Sells it.
Sells it, rather.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
So this particular drink, it calms the keep your diabetic out of
No, it
just
keeps you
cleanse
from,
it out.
cleanse you and
just
keeps you from being hungry.
Oh, wow.
That's all.
So
That's what I heard.
this is the last session, Doc. The green drink, which is right on the table in front of us, but what we can make ourselves. Once again, the ingredient is
Yeah, that's it. You make it.
cucumber,
Kale, green apples, spinach, mint, celery, lime, and parsley.
okay. So with that kind of drink, what's happening in the body?
Well, I'm hearing parsley is an exceptional vitamin A source. I heard kale, and that has a lot of what we call phytonutrients. For people that didn't know, cucumber is the only food that you can eat that is negative. It causes the body to burn more calories to digest cucumber than it gives you. So that is a wonderful dieting food. It is a negative calorie food. So I'm listening to all the ingredients, and they are just completely wonderful. If that were used on a regular basis or substituted for a meal, I could see weight loss very well, very easily. The only thing to add to the drink is to ensure that you take 8 to 16 ounces of water in addition to whatever you're now drinking. So you want to increase your fluid intake by 16 ounces when you're starting that drink, because you got to give your body enough fluid to flush when it starts to do what it does.
Well, I'll tell you that Mr. Brown, he does work for me, you know, and when I saw him the middle of June, he really looked like he was dying. So I guess maybe this
He
was
had nothing to keep his vitamin up,
Right.
keep it moving.
But now, well, his daughter has been watching him on a regular basis, so he won't, you know, go back to me. But he said he's feeling so good. He's back to work because he's a person who fixes buildings and that kind of stuff. And the last time I spoke to him, you would think he was the doctor. Because he said, I don't know, Miss Hyde, but my doctor down there in DC wants me to call him every day. So I said, well, why does he want you to call every day? He said, I asked him that. And he said, the doctor said, the doctor feels better when Mr. Brown calls him every day.
He's a toothpick.
That's marvelous. He sounds like a very personable person.
Very personable. And then he told me it was he and his wife's anniversary. So he went out and had fun, you know, and I have a feel, you know, he was always complaining about his wife, you know, in a lovely way. But I guess he's getting his energy back. You know, but it was a nice story. And I tell him, I said, well, you know, I want to bring a girlfriend of mine down to DC to see the doctor. So he said, well, make sure you call maybe a month ahead of time, because you just can't walk in there, because he's filled with patients.
Well, we might get him on
That's
the
true.
wisdom table.
That would be wonderful.
And any comments, any questions of Dr. Boles before we let her go back to the sunshine and Baton Rouge?
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any neither, but I would like to talk to you again later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love the
yeah.
conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
I really learned a lot,
I did too.
because even though I knew Dr. Sebi
Especially about that
casually.
Vaseline. Ooh, Lord have mercy.
But it's a lot. If you have young women and in your home, you have to sit down and talk to them,
Yeah.
whether they're 12 or 22 or 32.
Vicks Vapor Rub? Yuck.
Well, before you sign off on young women, the highest incident of HIV is women over 50.
That's what I was going to ask, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Because
For a
men
long
die
time.
younger than women in America, and we have a higher population of single women who are back out into the dating game, and they did not have what they got to face now when they were dating.
That's true.
Oh,
Yeah. Over 50, over 60, and up. That's
Yes,
the
ma'am. Highest
statistics that I
incident of
heard.
HIV positivity in black females are over the age of 50.
That's right.
so we're gonna come black to you, sis.
You better come back
Hey,
soon
listen.
so we can give the session.
See, the value of this kind of a show is just what it has. It's the sharing of. It's actually a study group. When the participants begin to bring more information to the table, the initial programs provide the stimulus for going after information. And then up the road, when we begin to share information, that makes a more powerful group of individuals. In Napoleon Hill's book, it's called the Mastermind chapter. In the Bible, it's called where two or more are gathered in my name, so am I. So the principle is there. We gather for good. We promote a program for good. The Supreme Being blesses us with individual knowledge and group knowledge. So Doc, thank you very much for sharing. And may your family and everyone be blessed for the good deeds that you do.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
We
Thank you so much.
appreciate
I always
you.
enjoy being there.
Yeah. Hope you can
Thanks a
come.
lot.
Hope you can come back with us
Certainly,
soon.
I look forward to it. I thank you so much for the invitation.
Okay.
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 God bless you, sis.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
So this has been the Wisdom Table, and wow, big classroom. Big classroom.
Great classroom.
A lot of people benefit from this show.